here's the obligatory nip and tuck tutorial. I opted to use an image with a background rather than something shot in a studio. That would probably be a bit too easy. This is also an image where it's going to be a bit challenging due to the sideways tilt of the model, and in fact it's the tilt of the hip that's really causing the shape of the model to slump a little bit. So although she's got an amazing figure, it could do with a little bit of stretching, and we have to do it in various sections or portions. So looking at the image here, I'm at the stage now where I've done a little bit of retouching, and I've also done some colours which I've grouped here. Now as you can see, I've got masks on these different adjustment layers, and if I then took the background or the layer 1, which is the retouch layer, and I generated layers from that and tilted them, warped them, etc., then the masks would not follow. So what we're going to do is make sure that our client is happy with the colours and the retouching done so far. And then you can go straight to Image, Duplicate. And we're going to just duplicate the merged layers only and OK that. And now we actually have a flat image, so I'm just going to Command J it. And the first thing I think I'll do here is just straighten it up a little bit, because that will actually help her stand slightly straighter up. I need my ruler, so I'm going to press Command R to get rulers on the sides here. And that means I can pull a guide, and might as well pull another one, although I'll just be doing a straight transform, really, a straight rotate. So Command T to free transform. I'm swiveling that to make the image more or less straight. Now I could pull it out to enlarge it in the corners, but I'm just going to enter that, and I'm going to give the image just a little bit of a crop. We're just cropping the image down to about here. For what we're going to do, the guides are going to be a little bit distracting, so I'm just going to go to View and Clear Guides. Now I'm sure you can see here that that's actually helped her seem a little bit longer, not quite as horizontal, more vertical in shape. Now we're going to split her in two first of all, and I'm going to just take a marquee, rectangular marquee, and just drag it to about the bottom of her bikini top here on the left hand side, and Command J that as well. Now although I would never stretch the whole figure, I wouldn't want to stretch actually her face and everything else, I will stretch her legs a little bit longer down, so Command T, and then just simply drag that downwards about 103% there. So I'm going to OK that. Now I'm just going to use the pen tool and make myself a new path. So I'm taking the pen tool and making a very generous selection, going all the way down and around the legs and up again there. I'm just going to make that into a selection and Shift Command C and Command V. Now my plan is to use Puppet Warp, but before I do that, because it's quite tricky, I'm going to use a Smart Object. That's going to make it a lot easier for me to re-edit this if I'm not completely happy with it. So I'm going to go now to Edit and Puppet Warp, and we get this little network of a grid here, a bit like a spider's web, and we're going to put some holding points on it, some anchor points, so that certain points won't move. Starting with one up here, I'm going to do another one at the top there. I'm going to put a couple of points on the middle where the legs meet, and on the shoes, or on the toes rather, one where the legs cross, and I think I'm going to just put one right here, because I want the thigh to move a little bit inwards but not so much here on this flat area. So I want to start here by moving it in from the outside. And you may wonder, why did she not cut out the whole thing? Well, the reason for that is really that I want to use the background and just keep that same transition really from the background to the model. I'm going to try and make the edges not go too hard. Unfortunately, one of the things that the Puppet Warp does, it has a tendency to make edges go a little bit hard. I'm going to undo that point, and I'm actually going to press Command H for a moment, and you can see the edge going a little bit hard there. Now what we're going to do is just turn that opacity down to about 50%ish, and you see that's the roundness that we've created there. We're also just going to push it in a little bit, and I'm pushing it in from quite far out there, hoping to get a smoother shape in that way. Puppet warp can very easily break up into little bumps. Can also pull in a little bit there, but you see the whole leg moving it now, so we're going to push back on the other side. I'm trying to make as few points as possible really. I'm going to take that muscle above the knee and push that in quite a bit. Sometimes you see the image doing a little jig slightly in there as well, and then I'm going to try and pull this leg up to make it a little bit longer, a little bit more elongated, because the other one appears longer. That's just an illusion. Now also we're going to just push in a little bit from the side here and making that a touch smaller, trying not to push it so far that it actually creates the new shape though. I might just push it back ever so slightly there and push the other foot a little bit in and a bit on the ankle just to slim that ankle down. And I'm not sure about this side. I will just take it a little bit in, and now let's just take the opacity up and see what it looks like. And we might as well just look at the whole image, Command 0. It is tempting to take this in ever so slightly, but I think I'm going to just undo that and keep it a little bit curvy, because after all it is kind of a curvy kind of image, wouldn't you say? So I'm just going to turn my grid back on again, Command H, and OK that. So what I'm doing here is I'm creating a path, and as you can see here I'm just making a path on the outline, precisely on the outline, and I'm going to use this later on. Before we actually use the path to cut her out and to extend her torso upwards, we're also going to use a content aware fill, and on this fill hopefully it will be able to compute what the background is meant to look like without the model on it. That'll be interesting. If you don't have content aware fill and you're not in CS5, or if we don't get the content aware fill to actually do the job here, and I've noticed it very often fails on a lot of images, it just doesn't get it. So if that fails, we're going to have to recreate the background using a little bit of cloning, and I'm going to complete the path and come back to you when I've done that. So here's my completed path for the upper part of the torso, and I did actually make a couple of holes in that path because I think we're going to move the whole face a little bit further up there. I've also created another path, just a very rough one, around the model, and this one we're going to load in a moment when we've created a new layer. So I'm going to just write extras on this one because this was our cloning layer. And then we're going to make a new layer just below that, and I'm going to merge everything that's visible into that layer, and we don't have to think about any adjustments layers because there's no color going on here as separate layers. Now we can command click on our path 2, or you could make just a lasso selection for this. And on this one we're really going to put Photoshop a little bit to the challenge and try and remove the whole model. So we're going to go to edit fill and use content aware fill, and let's see how that copes. Now this is obviously a bit processor intensive because the computer is computing after all. Now let's see how it removes the model, and hopefully it doesn't make a dog's dinner out of it. Now this doesn't have to be perfect, and strictly speaking we don't actually have to use the bottom part of it at all. It's just easier probably for Photoshop to work it out that I want to remove the whole model. There we are. We did get a bit more than we bargained for, but if I deselect it I can just erase the bits that really bother me at the bottom. We're not going to use the bottom anyway, so we can just bring her legs back there, and then going further up here we're just going to have to reconstruct a little bit, and you can see here typically it's kind of created these fields here, so we're going to just have to work a little bit on that and just even those out if we do use it. So instead of doing lots of work on it before I do the transformations, I'm just going to do that little bit up there and leave the rest for later in case we need it. You're going to use very small parts of this new background anyway, so I'm just going to take a stamp tool and just repair these things. So if you weren't working with a content aware fill, this is what you might have to do, or patch it, use some grafts perhaps, just to recreate this background. So I'm not making it completely perfect here. I can do that later if I use it. I'm going to turn off this for a moment, and we're going to shift up that upper torso. So command clicking on the upper torso path, and we need to modify that selection just a touch. So select and modify, and first I'll go for expand. I'm just going to expand it 1 pixel there. Select and modify and feather. So I'm going to feather it just 1 pixel as well. What we really should be doing is looking at this in quick mask or using the refine edge. But as long as I have a slight blue or a colour around those edges, I'm quite happy with that. And as you can see there, I've included my shadow there as well. So turning off the quick mask again, and Shift Command C and Command V to copy and paste merged. And we can then turn the layer 8 back on again. Let's just create a mask without black, just a white mask, and just roughly mask out the rest of it. I'm going to now use the move tool and just shift that upper part of the torso upwards a little bit. I'm going to remember how much I've moved it as well, so I'm holding down the shift key and the up key. So a little bit there, a little bit more, and I'm going to have to transform the other part of the torso to connect with it as well. So I think 3 little ups there. For a little bit more transform, I'm now also going to make that into a smart object. That means that if I get it wrong, I can always bring it back. Instead of bringing it all the way back, I can make some small adjustments to it. So edit, transform and warp. I'm going to try and lift the shoulder up. I'm going to also try and lift the arm up a little bit. That does lift the face up as well, so we've got to be careful with that. So try and compensate a bit there. That elongates her neck too. Now you see it bulges out a little bit there, so we're going to just bring it in and a bit up there. The great thing about normal warp is that it doesn't give those lumps and bumps that the puppet warp does. I can then also reposition it slightly down there. I'm going to try entering that. We're going to just have to turn off both the layers there together, and you can see there that she's now quite a bit taller. For the moment here, I'm just going to turn off both of those layers, and we're going to bring that up to about here. Shift Command C, Command V to paste. Let's just turn on these layers again. Again, I think I'm going to use a smart object, and this time press Command T. I'm going to warp it, but I'm just going to lift it up a little bit first, and then use the warp button there. Zoom in a bit more, and remembering to look at this area. Now, this was going to be transformed down a little bit anyway, so I'm going to do that now and try and match that there. And then it shifts at the top, so we're going to just keep on shifting up and down until we've got it just right. So let's come back to the image now that I've tied up a few loose ends. I've renamed the layers just so I know what they are, and you see here the before and after, and this is after I've also done a little bit of masking and checking on all the edges and all the transitions, just to make sure that there's nothing overlapping and no telltale signs of these transformations that we've done here.